أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم، إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم، تنزيل العزيز الرحيم، لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون. لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون. إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون. وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون. وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب، فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم. إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم، وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين. واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون، إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون. قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون. قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين. قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب عليم. قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون. وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين، اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون. وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون. أأتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون. إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين. إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون. قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون. بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون وآية لهم الأرض الميتة وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وأعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالأرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون فآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تعتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها مقرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم عاهد إليكم يا بني آدم ألا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نعمره ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وظللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون صدق الله العلي العظيم فاتحة مع السلام اللهم صل على محمد وعلى
محمد وآل محمد صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد काजिम तेरी गुर्बत पर کرتی ہے بکا زہرا، کاظم تیری غربت پر کرتی ہے بکا زہرا، چھوڑائی تیرے غم میں، چھوڑائی تیرے غم میں ہے کرب و بلا زہرا، کاظم تیری غربت پر کرتی ہے بکا زہرا، کاظم تیری غربت پر کرتی ہے بکا زہرا، جب کوئی نہیں آیا رونے کو جنازے پر، تو آ گئی خود زہرا، کاظم تیرے لاشے پر، اور پیٹ کے سر اپنا، اور پیٹ کے سر اپنا دیتی تھی صدا زہرا، کاظم تیری غربت پر کرتی ہے بکا زہرا، کاظم تیری غربت پر کرتی ہے بکا زہرا، پھر قتل ہوا تیرا بغداد میں ایک بیٹا، امت سے ملا تم کو پھر ایک نیا صدمہ، پھر آج تیرے گھر میں، پھر آج تیرے گھر میں محشر ہے بپا زہرا، کاظم تیری غربت پر کرتی ہے بکا زہرا، کاظم تیری غربت پر کرتی ہے بکا زہرا، زندہ میں بہت رویا شبیر کی غربت پر، عباس و سکینہ پر زینب کی مصیبت پر، اب تیری مصیبت پر، اب تیری مصیبت پر ہے نو حسینہ زہرا، کاظم تیری غربت پر کرتی ہے بکا زہرا، کاظم تیری غربت پر کرتی ہے بکا زہرا، مصروف بکا تھا وہ زہرا تیرے پہلو پر، سر پیٹ کے کہتا تھا مظلوم میری مادر، ہارون نے کاظم کو، ہارون نے کاظم کو जब जहर दिया जहरा, काजिम तेरी गुर्बत पर करती है बुका जहरा। काजिम तेरी गुर्बत पर करती है बुका जहरा। छोड़ाई तेरे हम में, छोड़ाई तेरे हम में, है कर बला जहरा। काजिम तेरी गुर्बत पर करती है बुका जहरा। काजिम तेरी गुर्बत पर करती है बुका जहरा। अल्लाह रुहल मुमिनीन व मुमिनात सवाब अल-फातिहा।
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. أفضل الذكر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، بارئ الخلائق أجمعين، باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه العبد المؤيد والرسول المسدد، حبيبي إله العالمين أبا القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. My dear respected brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As we gather here tonight to recognize a colossal figure in Islamic history, let us also, in addition to that, take our minds to Mecca and remember the very father of the figure we are gathered here to learn from, Abu Talib and Imam Musa bin Ja'far al-Kazim, alayhum as-salam. These two significant figures in Islamic history do not get the attention that they truly deserve. For if it was not for their contributions, Islam would cease to exist. They share a common denominator on multiple fronts, one being the grandchild of the progeny from the other. Abu Talib and Imam Musa al-Kazim, their similarities are truly uncanny. A day like this, the 25th of Rajab, coincides with the martyrdom of Sayyidina wa Mawlana al-Imam Musa al-Kazim alayhi salam. In addition to that, it is helpful to also underline where that inspiration, that source of strength, that motivation, and that wisdom and principle came from. When we track all of these back, we will find that they end up in the helm of that ship with Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. However, it was Rasulullah himself that put so much love, so much passion, so much commitment in making sure his uncle Abu Talib received the credit that he deserved in helping him with his upbringing. Abu Talib and Imam Musa al-Kazim are interconnected in a way that truly requires focus and analyzing in order to extract the pearls of wisdom that is found. For one, and today, coincidentally, is International Women's Day. For one, they were champions in giving and doing justice with regards to the women in their society and their families. Abu Talib, famously known to be the husband of Fatima bint Asad. Abu Talib's influence on her, and one may even argue her influence on him, is truly mesmerizing. We find in the early years, in the 600th year after Hijrah, roughly the 600th year, rather not after Hijrah, AD of the Common Era, before the Hijri calendar came about, we notice that his wife Fatima bint Asad, as she approaches the holy house of Allah, the Kaaba, and she enters the house of God, the house of Allah then seals back up miraculously. Everyone is shocked and afraid as to what had just happened. And they approach Abu Talib, making it apparent to him what had just happened. His yaqeen in that moment testifies the amount of trust he has in his wife, the amount of, in addition, love he has for her. For he makes mention that the house of Allah opened, it's a miracle. Therefore, let us not be an impediment on the miracle of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he put his tawakkul ala Allah, and that he had faith in his wife. In addition to that, when Fatima bint Asad, Abu Talib's wife, passed away, remembering that Rasulullah was raised in the house of Abu Talib alayhi salam, when his grandfather Abdul Muttalib passed away, Abu Talib took him in when he was about 12 years of age. When his wife Fatima passed away, Rasulullah made it very clear, a mutawatir statement agreed upon by all schools of thought. He would say, "Innaha ummi qad matat," that this is my mother who has died today. How much Rasulullah found Fatima bint Asad, the wife of Abu Talib, such a wonderful, integral figure in his life, is a testament to how much devotion Abu Talib had with his wife as well. For indeed, we find Abu Talib carries that message of the Abrahamic way of life, a Hanif, a Muwahhid in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a custodian of the holy house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Mu'min al-Quraysh, despite whatever other schools, other groups might say about Abu Talib, perhaps narrated in their sahih, authentic, canonized texts, that he is burning in hell. We couldn't care less with such statements and such sentiments, for rather Abu Talib to us is very clear. The uncle of the Holy Prophet, and the only crime he had, such that the hatred and venom that was lashed out against him was because he had a son by the name of Ali ibn Abi Talib. We find a parallel example in the life of Imam Musa al-Kazim as well. The positive influence in the family as well. Imam Musa al-Kazim alayhi salam, before we dig deep into the life of the Imam, like Abu Talib, had so much faith and devotion and love to his family, especially the women of his family, particularly his daughters, his plenty daughters. Books of tradition make mention that Imam Musa al-Kazim salamullahi alayhi had about 18 daughters. One of them, the very famous and scholar from Ahlul Bayt, Lady Fatima al-Ma'suma. And it is narrated that Imam al-Kazim alayhi salam taught, educated, made it incumbent that she learns and receives ilm, emphasizing the importance of teaching your daughters, such that when Imam al-Kazim had commitments outside of the home in the city of Medina pre his prison days, Imam al-Kazim wasn't around, he had commitments. A group of Shia came to the house of Imam Musa al-Kazim to inquire and ask and learn because this is your one opportunity to directly address the Imam of your time. Imagine if you had that opportunity, you would seize it. Now, especially if you come from faraway places, you're not able to reach out through cellularly, for example, or on the internet. You have none of that. You have to literally make your way. And so they finally arrive in Medina, but they realize that the Imam is not home. He has commitments elsewhere. Who receives them at the door? A 6-year-old or 5? The hadith make mention 5. A 5-year-old Fatima, daughter of Imam Musa al-Kazim. Lady Fatima al-Ma'suma, alayha salam, receives these visitors and makes it clear that my father's not around. But if you would like, ask me the questions. And this is a rather abnormal situation. We're here to see the marja' deen, the scholar, our Imam. And you're a very young girl. She said, don't worry. My father has taught me and taught me well. And so they ask her the questions. They write down the answers as well. Then later on, Imam al-Kazim alayhi salam returns. These group of people meet up with the Imam, and they had mentioned that we were here to see you, but someone at the door, a young girl, already answered our questions. And Imam al-Kazim said, what were the questions and what were the answers given? They explained all of their inquiries, and then they were told by the Imam, and what did she tell you? And they responded with every single reply she gave back. In that point, Imam narrated a powerful statement. Fidaha abuha. May her father be sacrificed for her. How he felt the pride in having a daughter who was intelligent, educated, knowledgeable, able to address the problems of the Shia. Taking pride in the women of your family is the sunnah of these two powerful, magnanimous individuals, Aba Talib, Mu'min al-Quraysh, and Imam Musa al-Kazim, alayhum as-salam. Abu Talib, as mentioned previously, despite claims of his demise, as if we know the demise of individuals and their final destinations, we have it made very clear that Abu Talib is a mu'min, if anything, the biggest mu'min, aside, obviously, from the Holy Prophet and Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen in Mecca. The biggest mu'min, the greatest believer in Allah's way after these was Abu Talib himself. A testament to that is the shi'r, the poetry Abu Talib would write about his nephew Rasulullah. See, when you love Rasulullah, when you are the one who fed Rasulullah, when you raised Rasulullah, you cannot but believe in Rasulullah the day he announces his message. Kuffar, former individuals who would bury babies alive, believed in Rasulullah. But the tender heart of Abu Talib did not believe in Rasulullah. This is a big misconception and a form of oppression done on the way of Abu Talib from many people today, unfortunately. 3/4 of the Muslim world today believes he died a kafir. Let's observe the poetry of Abu Talib to determine just from the poetry whether the man is a believer or a disbeliever in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Abu Talib writes, لَقَدْ أَكْرَمَ اللَّهُ النَّبِي مُحَمَّدًا فَأَكْرَمُ خَلْقِ اللَّهِ لِلنَّاسِ أَحْمَدُ وَشُقَّ لَهُ مِنْ إِسْمِهِ لِيُجِلَّهُ فَذُو الْعَرْشِ مَحْمُودٌ وَهَذَا مُحَمَّدٌ. The following teaches us nubuwah, teaches us tawheed, teaches us mahabbah, teaches us wilayah, and from the lips of Abu Talib. Allah has honored the Prophet Muhammad. لَقَدْ أَكْرَمَ اللَّهُ النَّبِي Muhammad. Allah has honored the Nabi, the Prophet Muhammad. And the greatest and most noble and generous of the people is the Nabi Muhammad. And Allah wanted to honor the Nabi Muhammad. And so he ripped from his name. And so Allah is Mahmud and he is Muhammad. The derivative of Muhammad, Mahmud. And so Allah took that name, ripped it, kept for him Mahmud and gave Ahmed to Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. Misunderstood, despised, but that's fine. Patient to the highest degree, like we have never seen individuals unless the likes of Imams and Anbiya. And this is no surprise, for he is the father of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt and the father figure for the greatest of Anbiya, Sayyiduna wa Mawlana, Mu'min al-Quraysh, Aba Talib, Aba Amir al-Mu'mineen, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayh. And this example is no surprising. It carries on to his grandchild, Imam Musa al-Kazim, who we gather here today and recognize the wisdom and sea of knowledge that Imam al-Kazim alayhi salam is. As mentioned, an integral figure, like his grandfather Abu Talib, in taking pride in the women of your family and not seeing them as shameful additions, as the 7th century pre-Islamic Arabian would normally do. Another lady in the household as an act of shame that brings humiliation to you. And that's why they would decide to bury their baby girls alive. The Ahlul Bayt found that the contrary, that would take pride in them. And it's no surprise because the mother of Imam al-Kazim alayhi salam was also the greatest scholar in her area. Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq salawatullahi alayhi would take so much pride in his wife, Hamida al-Barbariya, such that when people came to him with questions and inquiries, he would actually mention, my wife Hamida can tell you the answer. Especially if it were women who needed to speak to the Imam, he would just direct them to his wife. And he put full trust in that his wife would deliver the correct response, guidance necessary. Imam al-Sadiq calls the mother of Imam Musa al-Kazim Hamid al-Musaffat, Hamida the purified one. And this is a pattern we see emerging with every single member of the household of the Holy Prophet. And that when a society oppresses women, they make it an effort to elevate the women in their family. Let us gather on this day where globally, internationally, people are recognizing the contributions of many noble and esteemed women on International Women's Day, and not forget, yes, that just like how many might state behind a successful man is a great woman, behind a successful woman are great men as well. And amongst those men, Abu Talib and Imam Musa al-Kazim alayhi salam, champions in this regard. We find with Imam Musa al-Kazim, his life at the start was filled with difficulty and trouble from the establishments that put a lot of emphasis in undermining his father, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, such that when the Caliph, Abu Ja'far al-Mansur al-Diwaniqi, made it the effort to go and poison Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, he consulted with his representative in the city of Medina by the name of Sulaiman to go and make sure you confiscate the will of the Imam and figure out who his successor was. Because people know who the Ahlul Bayt are. They recognize their right and relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they want to stop whoever that successor might be before it's too late. And so Al-Mansur al-Diwaniqi being in Baghdad, his representative being in Medina, Sulaiman, and Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam in Medina as well, tells his representative, the Wali of Medina, to go and confiscate the will of Imam al-Sadiq. Make sure you realize who his successor is, that he makes mention in his will, and go and execute him as well. This Sulaiman takes the will of Imam al-Sadiq, and then he informs Al-Mansur al-Diwaniqi he's not able to do so. Why is that the case? Because in the will, we find multiple individuals listed as the successor. The first is Al-Mansur al-Diwaniqi. The first successor is you. I can't kill you. The second successor is me. He put me. The third successor is his wife, Hamida al-Barbariya. The fourth successor is his son, Abdullah. And the fifth successor is his other son, Musa al-Kazim, were not able to execute this will. And they let it be because Imam al-Sadiq has enough foresight to understand that if he lists the successor, he will be public enemy, number one, and a target. Let me list these five and preserve the line of Imamah through my son, Imam Musa al-Kazim alayhi salam. Imam al-Kazim would show multiple signs of esteem, wisdom, like no other, prudence, like no other at his young age with his father, Imam al-Sadiq. One day, Abu Hanifa, the scholar of the Hanafi school of thought, came to Imam al-Sadiq, and Nu'mani came and he said to him, I want to ask you a few theological, philosophical questions. Imam al-Sadiq said, just go ask them to my son. He was making a point from an early time that when I leave, don't be surprised, I make him my successor. I allocate him as my successor. Because look at what we have seen from the pristine and sharp wisdom he has. He approaches Imam al-Kazim, about 15 years of age, and he says to him, I was told, I was redirected to you, but let me challenge you here. He says to him, As-sayyi'atu min main, min ain. Where does evil come from? As-sayyi'atu min ain. Evil, what is the source of evil? Because at that time you had the various philosophical movements emerge. The Mu'tazilite, the Ash'arite movements, those who believed the Mufawwidha, those who believed in predestination, those who believed in the concept of free will. So these discussions were being held and people were speaking philosophically. Abu Hanifa contributed. He said, well, where does evil come from? Is it from Allah? Is it from people? Is it from both? Imam al-Kazim alayhi salam said to him, evil is never from Allah. For Allah makes it clear. قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ مِنْ شَرِّ مَا خَلَقَ. I seek refuge to the Lord of the Falaq from the evil of which his creation makes. The creation is not necessarily evil, but it can produce evil. So we're not seeking refuge from the evil creation because Allah doesn't make evil creations. Allah makes creations who have the capability to produce evil. As-sayyi'ah is not from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rather, it is from us, man and womankind. This was then followed up with another question, predestination or free will, to which the Imam makes it very clear, an area between both. We have predestined issues and we have free will at the same time. An example of predestination, you were never given the opportunity to choose who your parents were. That was predestined for you. Or your eye colors, that was predestined for you. And right now, if you decide to lift one leg, can you lift one leg? Yeah. Could you lift the other? You can't. You are predestined to never lift both at the same time. This is an area of predestination. This is all coming from Imam Musa al-Kazim alayhi salam. Then he follows that with, but you do have free will. Right now, if I want, I can lift my cup and drink it of water. I can speak the words I want. Can you do kufr billah? Could you not recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? He says, I can do it. Why would Allah predestine people to disbelieve in him? Why would Allah predestine people to do kufr in him? Allah wouldn't do that. That would be counterintuitive to what Allah would want from us, correct? So because there are people who can do kufr in him, that must mean they did it from their own free will, because Allah would never design people predestined to do free will. So clearly, here's an example of free will, and here's an example of predestination, and this all comes from a young boy. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam would notice this, would make an effort to have others notice this as well. In fact, Imam Musa al-Kazim alayhi salam was so well known and established for his knowledge that they had to make sure his knowledge was not necessarily directed back to him. Otherwise, he would be in trouble. We have a manuscript, a compendium called Musnad Ali bin Ja'far, the compendium of Ali, son of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam. Imam al-Sadiq had a son by the name of Ali. This Ali, brothers and sisters, is buried in Qum al-Muqaddisa. So you have two siblings buried in Qum, Fatima al-Ma'suma rather, pardon, you have an uncle and you have a niece buried in Qom. The son of Imam al-Sadiq and the daughter of Imam al-Kazim alayhi salam. But the daughter of Imam al-Kazim has the limelight and the spotlight, and truly and rightfully so. Look at where Allah places His light and find the wisdom behind it. Imam al-Sadiq has a son by the name of Ali. This Ali was a scholar. Ali, the son of Imam al-Sadiq, the brother of Imam al-Kazim, a scholar to the highest degree. Imagine today a very grand mujtahid, an ayatullah, understands the areas of jurisprudence, of fiqh, of theology, of the history of Rasulullah as well. He would constantly ask his brother Imam al-Kazim questions, and he would jot this down. We have the work Musnad Ali bin Ja'far, the compendium of Ali bin Ja'far. He would write down all the fiqh rulings taught by Imam Musa al-Kazim alayhi salam. But when he would write them down, he wouldn't write Qala akhi Musa bin Ja'far. My brother Musa, son of Ja'far al-Sadiq, said the following. He would say Qala al-Shaykh, Qala al-Sayyid. He would make mention that the teacher said, the Sayyid said. Why? Because if word goes out that this opinion conflicts with the establishment's opinion on jurisprudence, you will be in big, big trouble. So he would write down the fiqhi jurisprudential rulings taught by Imam Musa al-Kazim alayhi salam, and he would put them and preserve them in this work, and he would not directly link them back to Imam al-Kazim. He would maintain the discrete nature such that the book can be preserved and his brother will not be placed in danger. This work today, brothers and sisters, a collection of hundreds of fiqhi jurisprudential rulings you and I live by today. We don't necessarily know who originated them, who they go back to, and who we owe credit to. They all go back to Imam Musa al-Kazim alayhi salam. A vast majority of the way we conduct our lives, brothers and sisters, the permissibilities, the impermissibilities, halal, haram, najasa, tahara, a vast majority come from Imam al-Kazim alayhi salam. Many of us just don't know. Many of us haven't put the effort in. When you read the rasail al-amaliyah of our maraja, the rulings, they don't just give you the rulings from what they determined as God's rule. They research the ahadith. A good portion of the ahadith, the traditions that they research it, comes from the life of Imam al-Kazim as well. We owe him so much, and that our lives are easier due to his contributions. Salamullahi alayhi. This is just one source. Imam al-Kazim elsewhere is a raging sea of knowledge and wisdom, ready to quench all those who are thirsty of that knowledge and that wisdom. However, Imam al-Kazim alayhi salam would be placed under the eyes of the establishment. And the establishment would take notice that a lot of fame is coming this man's direction. And we need to put an end to this and stop it. We can't simply just take the sunnah of Banu Umayyah and slaughter the Ahlul Bayt. What we need to do is imprison them. These individuals, particularly the Ahlul Bayt, what we can do is put them in jail. What we can do to other Shia is a different story. Harun al-Rashid, we sometimes refer to him as Harun al-Rashid. The climate at the time was a very bizarre and tumultuous time. There were works written called Maqatil al-Talibiyin, the killings of those from Banu Abu Talib, alayhi salam. Because of this one time period, brothers and sisters, so many from the children of Abu Talib were slaughtered and killed. The line of Abu Talib doesn't just go through Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Rather, Aqil, a vast majority of those who died in Karbala were from the children and progeny of Aqil, the brother of Amir al-Mu'mineen, again the father of Muslim ibn Aqil, and many more. So the family, the Banu Hashim, that were still around, the Sada, the Sayyids, many of them were slaughtered by the sword. Just the line of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, there was a lesson. Don't kill these people by the sword anymore, because you saw what happened in Karbala. and you saw the revolts and the turmoil that occurred. That's why from Imam al-Hussein onwards, with the lives of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, they were all poisoned. We saw what happened to Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam by the sword. A huge backlash. Then we saw what happened to Imam Hussein Karbala. We will not fight them with the blades and make it apparent. That's why the attempts were all through poison discreetly. They took their chances with poison, then they really took care, making sure that they weren't directly associated with the killing. So they made sure they put the Imams either in house arrest and in prison. And that is why the Holy Prophet makes mention, مَا مِنَّا إِلَّا مَقْتُولٌ أَوْ مَسْمُومٌ. There is none from us except killed by the sword or poisoned by sim. Then the attention is made clear. There was a man who was charged by Harun to go and kill 60 individuals from the line of Abu Talib. And these individuals were divided into portions of 3, 20 each. And they were divided from youth to young men to elderly. And this individual ordered by Harun al-Abbasi to go and kill all of them. He went and he started with the youth. They were all held in a room, and he went and he killed all of the young men from Abu Talib's line, the Banu Hashim, the Sa'd. Then he killed all the middle-aged ones. Then he killed all the elderly. He gets to the last one. He looks back right before he kills them, and he says to him, how will you stand on the day of judgment and face Allah knowing what you had just did? And killed the line of the progeny of the Holy Prophet and the line of the progeny of Fatima al-Zahra. The man made a very famous statement. God can never forgive me for what I've already did. So it's pointless. He had al-yas min ruhillah. He had despair. Imam al-Kazim alayhi salam himself comments on this event. He comments on this event. This happened during his tenure. He says, the bigger sin he made wasn't him killing all of these individuals from the line of Fatima al-Zahra. It was when he said, I despair in Allah's rahmah. When he said, I give up on Allah's rahmah. Because Allah, can He forgive you at the end of the day or no? There is no sin too big God cannot forgive. Allah is bigger than any sin an individual can commit. And if you sincerely, genuinely repent and perform tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah will forgive you. The bigger sin was when he said, I have despair in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Imam al-Kazim gave us a lesson here, theologically. In this event, we learn a theological lesson, that there is no sin too big for your Lord to forgive. Yet this individual, brainwashed by the establishment, at the time, the culture was to persecute anyone from the line of Ahlul Bayt, the line of Fatima al-Zahra, salamullahi alayha. But at the helm of this was Imam al-Kazim alayhi salam. Yeah, he was different. You can't necessarily go at him directly. Otherwise, you'll have backlash. Banu al-Abbas rose on the slogan of Ar-Ridha min Ali Muhammad. Satisfaction only comes from Al Muhammad. If you want Allah's satisfaction, it only comes from them. And so the people saw that, yeah, we agree, we want Ahlul Bayt to come and rule. We don't want Banu Umayyah anymore. But what they didn't know was what Banu Abbas meant was themselves Al Muhammad, because they saw themselves from the Ahlul Bayt. Banu al-Abbas, from the line of Al-Abbas, the uncle of the Holy Prophet. From that, they used the excuse, look, we're related to the Prophet. We meant us Ahlul Bayt, not the line of Abu Talib. So they deceived the people. And they knew what happened with Banu Umayyah was not going to be repeated again. That's why they fell, and that's why people were fed up with them. And so you can't directly go after the Imams of Ahlul Bayt. So what they did was imprison them and discreetly poison them. Imam al-Kazim alayhi salam, that raging river of knowledge and wisdom, imprisoned, sent to multiple prisons. Traditions narrate varying years of sentences he had, salamullahi alayh, but the consensus between a majority of scholars is that 14 years the Imam spent in these prisons. Before the Imam was thrown in these jails, there was an event that occurred that teaches us about the soft heart of Imam al-Kazim alayhi salam. We find that in Medina, there was a man, books of tradition narrate, from the descendants of Umar ibn al-Khattab, from his descendants. This man happened to not have the most favorable image of Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib. And so in the presence of Imam Musa al-Kazim, he cursed Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib. The companions of Imam al-Kazim said to the Imam, metaphorically speaking, rolling up their sleeves, we're going to go beat him up for what he had just said in front of your face. Not only did he say a very wrong and horrible, terrible statement like that, he said it in front of you. So he wanted to deliberately hurt your feelings. We're going to get him. Imam says, please don't do that. Don't. They said, why? He did kufr. You can't curse Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib. You can't. The man's glorified in the Quran. You curse a man glorified in the Quran, you're rejecting Allah's decree at that point. Glorified in the Holy Book multiple times. So we have to beat him up. Some people today would jump to do that. Imagine if you hear the most beloved in your life cursed and slandered, you will not hesitate to roll up those sleeves, as we said, and just go and knock them out. Imam al-Kazim is not of that nature. This is rather an immature thing to do, a statement. Who cares? Let them say whatever they want. The day it comes that they want to physically harm you, then maybe think about rolling up your sleeves. But they're not doing any harm. Leave them alone. That's not how you're going to change his heart. I'll take care of him. And they left the Imam to one day go and visit this man. And the Imam made his way to him. He realized he was a farmer. And when he approached his farm, the man looked at Imam al-Kazim alayhi salam and said, don't trample on my plants and my crops. Imam al-Kazim said, don't worry about that. He came to him and he said to him, how much were these crops that you're planting? He said, they're 100 dinar. He said to him, how much do you hope to make out of the yield from these crops? You grow them to sell them. How much is your intention to make from the yield of these? He says, I don't know the ghaib. I don't have ilm al-ghaib. He says, I asked you, how much do you hope? The man said, I hope to make 200 dinars. So they cost me 100 dinar and I hope to make 200. So 100 dinar return on my investment, basically. Imam al-Kazim alayhi salam said, okay, is that the case? Here, right here, is 300 dinar for you. He gave him the value of the crops and the value of the yield of the crops right in front of him. Here you are. This man dropped to Imam al-Kazim's feet and he began crying, knowing what he had done to him earlier, stating the following line, Allah ya'lam hayth yaj'al risalata. God knows where he puts his message. The next day, the Imam was in Masjid al-Nabawi, and this individual was present with the Imam's companions as well. And they say, oh, it's that man again. He might say something else. This time we're going to really not be patient enough and we might actually do something. To their shock, they see the individual stand up stating, Assalamu alayka ya Sayyidi wa Mawlai, Musa bin Ja'far. How are you? May Allah's peace and blessings be upon you, O my master and leader, Musa, son of Ja'far al-Sadiq. The companions of Imam al-Kazim were shocked. Imam al-Kazim looked at them and he said, see, is what you wanted to do better or what I did for him better than what you wanted to do? I changed his heart. I changed his mindset. Wasn't that a much better thing to do than go and just beat him up, which is a wonderful lesson in our lives, brothers and sisters? There are ways to address problematic individuals in our lives. One way could be beating up someone, but you're going to cause more problems for you in the long run. Don't do that. It's not a solution. The right way to do it is the way Imam al-Kazim did it, alayhi salam. Be nice, be upfront, be generous, be tender, have a soft heart, and it will truly, what comes from the heart, reaches the heart. And this man became a follower of the Ahlul Bayt. Is what I wanted to do better than what you wanted to do? And they realized the wisdom of the Imam alayhi salam. And a similar incident, we find Imam al-Kazim alayhi salam making his way and finding a home playing very loud music. and he asks from someone who goes to throw out some of the trash from the home. He asks this person, noticing the house with music, dancers, having a lavish party, asking the person who comes outside to throw some of the trash, stating, is the owner of the home a free man or a slave? To which the servant said, no, he's a free man, not a slave. Imam al-Kazim replied, that's correct. For if he was a slave to Allah, he would never have disobeyed his master. This person returned, and the owner of the house stated, what took you so long? The servant said, I spoke to a man, and he said the following. This man, by the name of Bishr, goes outside and he runs to see who this individual was that made such a heart-touching statement, noticing the sins he has, noticing the actions that he was doing were not befitting. He ran outside, he didn't even have time to put on his shoes, and in that moment he caught Imam al-Kazim and he again dropped to his knees, crying and asking, Halli and Tawbah, am I able to repent? It's this epiphany. Sometimes we just need that one statement or that one sentence that really can just change you and change your view and outlook. And it was that one statement. If you were truly a slave to Allah, you would not have disobeyed your master. You are a free person. And he ran, not able to put on his shoes, running outside barefoot, given the title Bishr al-Hafi. The many Sufi denominations today, they see Bishr al-Hafi as a Sufi saint. Many don't even know necessarily what caused the epiphany from him to go from someone just partying, negligent of their deen and their faith, to a saint of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he became a scholar, this individual, under the wings of Imam al-Kazim alayhi salam. Wherever the Imam would go, he would take his positive influence, enlightening the masses, until, as mentioned, the establishments could not take it any longer. They threw the Imam in a prison in Basra, in the home of an individual who would constantly see the Imam praying outside. One day he had invited his friend to come over, and the Imam was under house arrest in this man's home. He had a large house, and he had space outside where the Imam would stay, a courtyard, if you could imagine. And so his friend came to visit, and they were looking outdoors, and they were wandering and looking, observing the scenery. And his friend says to the owner, so the visitor says to the owner of the home that Imam al-Kazim is staying in prison at, there's a piece of cloth on the floor that's been there for hours. Why don't you go and remove it? To which the man says, look closely. That is Imam al-Kazim praying in sujood. Then the Imam raises his head from that sujood, that sajda, that prolonged sajda. He says this is what he does in the day. The whole entire night, he does salat al-layl. In the morning, he stays from fajr until dhuhr in the state of sujood. Then from dhuhr until maghrib, he does tasbih and does more prayers and recites the Quran and recites supplications. Then from maghrib to fajr, he does salat al-layl. Then from fajr onwards, he just stays in sujood until dhuhr, and the cycle repeats. For long and long, the Imam alayhi salam would just stay in the state of prostration. Orders came from Harun al-Abbasi to go and torture him. The man said, I can't. How can I hurt someone who all they do in the day is fast and all they do in the night is pray? I can't. Harun noticed he's not fulfilling his order and job. He's like, then I will bring him close. Basing his approach on the mindset, keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. And to him, Imam al-Kazim was his enemy. So he brought Imam al-Kazim to the capital where Harun al-Abbasi was. And he brought him to a prison in modern day Kazimain, the likes of which may Allah never show you a prison as such. A dungeon. Traditions call it a tamura. It's a third level prison under the earth. And under that third one, they build a small room and they put the prisoner in that room such that they cannot distinguish night and day. And the Imam would be placed in that jail. But despite those difficult situations, despite the chains, despite the metal despite the restriction, the Imam would be known to give thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in a famous incident, he would state, Allahumma innaka ta'lam annani kuntu as'aluka an tufarrighani li'ibadatik. Allahumma waqad fa'alta dhalika falaka alhamd. Oh Allah, you always knew I wanted privacy to worship you. Oh Allah, you've given me just that. All praise belongs to you, Ya Rabbil Alameen. He took a negative moment and made it positive for his sake. Imam al-Kazim alayhi salam, going through those difficult times, brothers and sisters, and as mentioned, cannot tell necessarily night from day, such that he would request from the guard to tell him when it was prayer time. The Imam knows when it's prayer time. Allah gives him that knowledge. But the Imam wants to make it very clear, how can anyone survive in such circumstances? And it was a difficult circumstance. Imam al-Kazim alayhi salam, due to the difficulties of the atmosphere, unable to get enough air to breathe, whenever they would open the door to pass some food to the Imam would make his way to that blessed door to get a breath of fresh air. Until one of the guards by the name of a Sindi sees that every time the door opens, the Imam just makes his way closer to get more of that air, and he took his opportunity. And when the Imam was close to the door, he struck the holy Imam across his blessed face, harming the Imam alayhi salam. Despite this, they noticed the Imam was still beloved by many. And so, even thrown in jail, the Imam was so loved by many. And Harun was fed up. I bring him in jail, people love him. I harm him, people love him, and no one knows. Let me get someone and let me put him through humiliation. He found the most provocative lady in all of Baghdad, who would be known to sell herself constantly. And he threw her in the jail with the Imam, such that when people notice that she's with the Imam, then his fame and his love in the hearts of people will all go away. They throw her in the jail and they wait moments, they wait some time, and they bring aristocrats and they bring influencers to come and witness when they open the door, to hopefully, in their eyes and impression, catch the Imam and bring him to shame and tell everyone what had happened, and no one else will care about him any longer. To their surprise, upon opening the door, they find this lady who, being the most provocative of individuals the night before, praying, doing sujood behind Imam Musa al-Kazim. And they literally were fed up and angry at that, asking, why, how did this happen? She said, I came in and I never saw a man so oppressed, yet so thankful to his Lord. And he requested, let's pray. I said, I don't have the clothing to pray. He said, that's fine. Take from my robe and wear it as attire for prayer. And I began to pray. Look at how he's able to change the lives of other people around him by just being his pure, blessed self. And it came to the time, brothers and sisters, where the Imam alayhi salam went through even more torture, more difficulty. They shackled him with more of these chains. And people became fed up. The Shia could no longer wait any longer. And they wanted to know when their Imam would be visible to them. Imagine having your Imam in jail, knowing what he's going through and the difficulties he's going through. And so one of the Shia somehow makes his way, gets a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to visit the Imam in the prison. And he goes to the cell of Imam Musa al-Kazim alayhi salam, and he begins to cry, saying, Sayyidi, when mata al-farj? When is the faraj? When are we able to see and have this relief of seeing you again? The people miss you. The people want you. When will we see you again? Imam al-Kazim says, in 3 more days, the relief will be there. And this man goes and informs the masses, in 3 days, on a Friday, we're going to see our master. Finally, after all of these years and difficulties, all that he went through, in those last days, brothers and sisters, Imam al-Kazim, it became so difficult. And he is Kazim al-Ghayb, the one who restricts all of his emotions and is patient with whatever happens, began to say, Allahumma khallisni min sijni Harun, oh Allah, help me from the imprisonment of Harun. It became difficult for our holy Imam, such that when those 3 days went by, the masses gathered on that bridge of Baghdad and awaiting the Imam. Any moment the Imam will be free. They said that the Imam on that 3rd day will come and visit us. Where is he? Until they notice a group of guards carrying that coffin. When they bring the coffin in front of them, they are wondering in shock, where is our Imam? We are expecting to see him. We've missed him. We've wanted to see him. To which, when they unravel the shrouds covering the body in that coffin, they see it is none other than their Imam Musa al-Kazim, salamullahi alayh. And they begin weeping, noticing that this was their Imam, and this is exactly what he predicted. Only in 3 days I will be released. But in what state will you be released? Released, poisoned, tortured, harmed, and abused in the prison of Harun al-Rashid. The Imam alayhi salam was there, and Imam, the young Imam al-Rida alayhi salam, was present in that gathering, in that crowd. They brought a Christian priest, a Christian doctor, and they said to him, examine him, see, did he die of normal causes or was it a poisoning? And so the doctor takes the palm of the holy Imam and he begins to study and notices and asks, does this man have a family? They said, why? Because we need to let them know that their father, Musa al-Kazim, has died poisoned in the sijn and the cell of Harun al-Abbasi. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un wa saya'lamu alladhina zalamu ayya munqalibin yanqalibun wal 'aqibatu lil muttaqin farrij 'anna ya Allah. Oh Allah, we ask you on Babul Hawa'ij, Musa al-Kazim, salamullahi alayhi, to grant us all of our hajat, for he is the door of desire and the door of hopes and aspirations and wishes. Oh Allah, we ask you on Mu'min al-Quraysh, the Mu'min of Mecca, Abu Talib, to grant us the ziyarah of Abu Talib and the shafa'ah of these pinnacle stars from Al-Muhammad in the Akhirah. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى اللهم على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
अब दिल को नहीं ताकत शरह ग़मे जां का, उस लाश की तौहीन के दर पे हुए बदख्वाह, हम मालो के कांधे पे जनाजे को रखा, है ना मुहिब्बों को भी आने दिया हमरा, यूं जाती थी इस खल्क के सरताज की मैया, जिस तरह किसी बेकसो मोहताज की मैया, सर पीटो के ये मातम आका है मुहिब्बो, तैयब बिने तैयब का जनाजा है मुहिब्बो, मूसी काजिम गरीब आई फलक से सदा, मूसी काजिम गरीब आई फलक से सदा, मूसी काजिम गरीब कत्ला हुए बेखता, मूसी काजिम गरीब, 13 बरस कैद थे और थे बीमार भी, 13 बरस कैद थे और थे बीमार भी, थी ना दवा बेग़िज़ा, मूसी काजिम गरीब आई फलक से सदा, मूसी काजिम गरीब आई फलक से सदा, मूसी काजिम गरीब कत्ला हुए बेखता, मूसी काजिम गरीब, خرمے میں بے رحماں نے زہر ہلا ہل دیا، خرمے میں بے رحماں نے زہر ہلا ہل دیا، زہر سے مارا گیا موسی کاظم غریب، آئی فلک سے صدا موسی کاظم غریب، آئی فلک سے صدا موسی کاظم غریب، قتل ہوئے بے خطا موسی کاظم غریب، آپ کے 40 تھے اہل و عیال و یتیم، آپ کے 40 تھے اہل و عیال و یتیم، لاش پہ کوئی نہ تھا موسی کاظم غریب، آئی فلک سے صدا موسی کاظم غریب، آئی فلک سے صدا موسی کاظم غریب، قتل ہوئے بے خطا موسی کاظم غریب، لاش مقدس رہی جسر پہ بغداد کے، لاش مقدس رہی جسر پہ بغداد کے، کوئی نہ پرسا ہوا موسی کاظم غریب، آئی فلک سے صدا موسی کاظم غریب، آئی فلک سے صدا موسی کاظم غریب، قتل ہوئے بے خطا موسی کاظم غریب، پھول پہ لاشا پڑا کوئی نہیں پوچھتا، پھول پہ لاشا پڑا کوئی نہیں پوچھتا، ہے یہ امام خدا موسی کاظم غریب، آئی فلک سے صدا موسی کاظم غریب، آئی فلک سے صدا موسی کاظم غریب، قتل ہوئے بے خطا موسی کاظم غریب، لاتے ہیں ہم مال جو کس کا جنازہ ہے یہ، لاتے ہیں ہم مال جو جس کا جنازہ ہے یہ، آئے یہ کیا ہو گیا موسی کاظم غریب، آئی فلک سے صدا موسی کاظم غریب، آئی فلک سے صدا موسی کاظم غریب، قتل ہوئے بے خطا موسی کاظم غریب، مقصد و مسعود ہو نصرت سید کرو، مقصد و مسعود ہو نصرت سب کی کرو، اے میرے حاجت روا موسی کاظم غریب، آئی فلک سے صدا موسی کاظم غریب، آئی فلک سے صدا موسی کاظم غریب، قتل ہوئے بے خطا موسی کاظم غریب، موسی کاظم غریب، تیرے تابوت کی وہ تنہائی، نہ تھا بیٹا غریب نہ بائی، چند مزدور آئے اجرت پر، لاش رستے سے تیری اٹھوائی، تو ساتھ ہوا مشکل کشا نور جناب سیدہ یا موسی کاظم، یا موسی کاظم، مولا تو بھی کرے ہوائج ہو، تیرا سکہ جہاں میں رائج ہے، ہم تو ہر امتحان سے گزرے، دینے والا تو ہی نتائج ہے، تو ساتھ و مشکل کشا نور جناب سیدہ یا موسی کاظم، یا موسی کاظم، یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین، اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد، بار الہ واسطہ باب الحوائج Imam Musa ibn Jafar alayhi salam, please, Ya Allah, on this commemoration today, on this with the barakah of this majalis, inshallah, give relief to all the people who have been affected by corona everywhere around the world in our community. Oh Allah, give people relief from all kinds of difficulties they may have. Al-Fatiha. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم كن لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وأينا حتى تسكنه أرزك توأا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. متوجه زيارة. السلام عليك يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي هلت بفنائك عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بكيت وبكي الليل والنهار ولا جعل الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولاي يا غريب الغرباء السلطان أبا الحسن مولانا علي بن موسى الرضا. السلام عليك يا أختك فاطمة المعصومة ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولاي يا صاحب العصر والزمان الأمان الأمان الأمان. أحسن الله لك الأزا في جدك الغريب المظلوم إمام موسى بن جعفر عليه السلام. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان. السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان. أجل الله لك ما وعدك من النصر وظهور الأمن ورحمة الله وبركاته.